Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the CIGA Design Z Series Hunter. This watch is available from CIGAdesign.com for $499 which is €426. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in a watch box which is in the style of a book, and that's housed inside this outer cardboard box in shipping. So I'll take it out and show it to you. So as you can see, very well protected in shipping, because on either end of the book style watch box we have two cut out foam protective caps. So I'll remove the two foam caps, and this is the watch box itself. As you can see, very aesthetically pleasing, because in silver we have the Z Series Hunter diagram of the watch, and also in the lower right corner we have CIGA Design Original, and the top right we have the CIGA Design logo in silver, which is very aesthetically pleasing. So very well finished sleeve. Now it's a very snug fit inside the sleeve, so to get better purchase I'm just going to remove my right glove, and then I'll be able to withdraw the watch box, as you can see. So just bear with me and I'll put my glove back on. Sometimes collectors comment on my videos asking why I wear gloves, because it appears pretentious, especially when I'm handling a low tier piece between €0 and €500 price point. So to clarify, the reason why I wear gloves in all my videos is because it serves two purposes. It helps the camera to autofocus on the piece, and it also prevents fingerprints and smudges on watches when I'm handling them. So this is the watch box itself, as you can see, in the style of a book. One opens it, and inside we have the details of the piece, and there's also a cutout which shows the head of the piece. And then you turn it over, we have the specifications of the piece on the left. There's also two cutouts, one cutout for the head of the piece, and very good attention to detail, good design, because we've got a ribbon which goes beneath it, and that makes it easier to get purchase on the ribbon, and you pull up the ribbon and that prizes it out of the cutout, so it's easy to withdraw the head of the piece from the cutout. And the lower cutout is for the bracelet, so you have to fit the bracelet to the head of the piece yourself, but that's very easily done because it has quick release stainless steel spring bars. So I'll open the other pages. Now in the last page we've got an owner's instruction manual, clear concise diagrams. The instructions are in English, and it details the operation of the movement used, which is the CIGA Design Caliber CD07 automatic. Also details how to fit the H-link bracelet to the head of the piece with the quick release stainless steel spring bars if you're unfamiliar. Also details daily maintenance and care, so advice on daily wear of the piece, and also has details of the 12-month international warranty, including a contact phone number if you want to make a warranty claim. So very good, clear, concise diagrams, instructions in English, clear and concise. So they deserve credit for a very well made watch box in the style of a book, and also good owner's instruction manual printed into it. With the watch, one also gets this warranty card. There's space to fill in the name of the purchaser, contact number, purchase date, product name, product number, and as I've detailed, I'm pleased to report this piece, the Z Series Hunter, is covered by a 12-month international warranty. There's also a contact email if you want to make a warranty claim, support@CIGAdesign.com. At this price point, $499, which is €426, it's at the upper end of the low tier. So to clarify, €0 to €500 price point is low tier. At €426, it is at the upper end of the low tier, and I would prefer to see a 2-year international warranty at this price point. 12 months is the industry standard for low tier pieces, but it's the minimum. So I think at this price point, CIGA Design could do better and include a 2-year international warranty, but 12 months is okay. Now, you also get this toolkit, and I've reviewed a plethora of CIGA Design watches over the years, and this is the first time I've seen them include a toolkit for resizing the bracelet, which is very good. So I'll take out the items from the toolkit and show you what's included. And I think they deserve credit for this, because this makes resizing the pushpin H-link bracelet very easy. So one gets this bracelet resizing tool, as you can see, which has a stainless steel shank to it and a removable tip, and the body is made from plastic, but the actual shank of it is made from steel and the tip of it is made from steel, so it's good. This does suffice, it works okay for pushing out the push pins in the H-link bracelet and resizing it. One also gets this plastic block, and this is very useful. I use one of these myself. They are very useful for holding a bracelet when you're resizing it, and regardless of whether it has screw pins or push pins. So what I do with it is I put 4 dots of blue tack in each of the 4 corners, and then I stick it down to the desktop. and that prevents it from sliding around when you're resizing a bracelet, so it holds the bracelet steady, and then you've got two hands free, one to hold the bracelet inside the block and the other hand can be used to manipulate a screwdriver, for example. So this is very good. I use the same style of this myself. They're very durable and robust, and also the slots are very good because they fit a plethora of bracelet thicknesses, both oyster style, jubilee style, beads of rose style bracelets, for example, and also the H-link bracelet used in this piece. Good to get that included. Now, one also gets this mallet, and these are very useful as an alternative to using the bracelet resizing tool I showed you. You can use this for pushing out the push pins in bracelets, but often it's difficult to fit them back into the bracelet using one of these tools. So, as an alternative, you can use this mallet. So as you can see, on one side of the mallet it's got a steel head, and on the other side it's got a nylon head, and I'll explain why it's got the two different heads. Correctly proportioned, good length on it, so you can get good purchase on it to tap out the pins. So what you do is you use this plastic block to hold the bracelet, and as I've detailed, I recommend sticking it down to the desktop with 4 dots of blue tack in the corners. That will prevent it from moving around. And then what you do is, when the bracelet is located into it, you use this push pin, as you can see, and you can use this to tap out the push pin out of the bracelet, which is very good. So you don't have to worry about holding the bracelet because, as I'll show you, it fits securely. It's a very snug fit inside this plastic block, and you stick it down with blue tack to the desktop. This prevents the head of the piece and the bracelet moving out of position, so you can get good purchase on it. And then what you do is you use this push pin, as you can see, in the hole in the bracelet H-link, and then you tap it out using this mallet, as you can see. So tapping it out with the steel end is for use for tapping the pin. And then what you do is, when you're refitting it, you reverse it and you use this nylon end. The reason why I use the nylon end is because when you're tapping home the pin back into the bracelet link, this prevents the mallet scuffing and scratching the finishing. It's DLC coated. Now if you use the steel end, obviously steel to steel, you're going to scuff and scratch it, you're going to scuff and scratch the DLC coating to it. But by using the nylon end, you can tap in the bracelet pin into the link, but you're not going to scuff and scratch it, so it's very good. I use one of these myself, and they are excellent for both withdrawing push pins from push pin link bracelets and also tapping back in the pins. They work very well, and if you stick the block down to the desktop with 4 dots of blue tack, it will prevent it moving around. It's excellent. Very good resizing method. So credit to CIGA Design, because as I've detailed, I've reviewed a plethora of their watches. This is the first time I've seen them include a toolkit for resizing their bracelets, and it's good to see both. You can use this for withdrawing the bracelet push pins, and you can use the mallet for tapping the pins back in. And I think they really do deserve credit because it's a low tier piece between €0 and €500, and one doesn't often see a comprehensive toolkit included. Lastly, one also gets this microfiber polishing cloth. I always think it's a nice touch to see a microfiber polishing cloth included, although they could enhance it by branding it with CIGA Design. So, with regards to the specifications of the piece, this is the CIGA Design Z Series Hunter. We have a 48mm case diameter, we have a lug-to-lug measurement of 47.6mm, a thickness of 12.3mm, and a lug width of 22mm. The H-link bracelet tapers from 22mm at the lugs down to 18mm at the 2-button push butterfly clasp. 2-button push butterfly clasp is signed to a good standard with high definition engraving of the CIGA Design logo. The 2-button push triggers are mirror polished, solid 316L grade stainless steel, correctly proportioned, no sharp edges, no burrs. So to clarify, the Z Series Hunter is available in 3 case finishes: silver, carbon and black respectively. All the 3 pieces are solid 316L grade stainless steel, which is then sandblasted and then DLC coated. DLC stands for diamond like carbon, and the carbon in the coating makes the coating hard and scratch resistant, and therefore it prevents scuffs and scratches with daily wear and tear. So all 3 versions, silver, carbon and black, are DLC coated after the case and the bracelet being sandblasted. Of the 3 versions, I think this silver version is the best looking. Visually it does give the appearance of titanium with a matte satin finish to it rather than brushed satin finished as per 316L grade stainless steel. But however, I think CIGA Design have missed an opportunity here, because all 3 versions of the Z Series Hunter, silver, carbon and black, they are all stainless steel. The problem with using stainless steel is it adds heft to the piece. This is 151 grams, and it is notable because it is a large piece, 48mm diameter by 47.6 lug to lug. So it's a large piece, and therefore it does have heft at 151 grams. They really have missed an opportunity. Had they made this from grade 5 titanium, both the head of the piece and the bracelet, that would reduce it to circa 100 to 120 grams. And even though it's a large piece, it would reduce the heft and therefore make it more comfortable. But there we are. So we have an octagonal tonneau case, and in the front of the octagonal tonneau case we have a double dome sapphire crystal with AR coating on the underside, and the clear anti-reflective coating does an outstanding job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the double dome sapphire crystal. In the reverse we have an exhibition caseback which is glazed with mineral crystal. I'm not going to be critical of the use of mineral crystal in the caseback as a production cost cutting measure in order to maximise profit margin per piece, because strictly speaking an exhibition caseback doesn't need to be glazed with sapphire crystal as per the front, because to clarify, the front of a piece is prone to daily wear and tear and therefore being scuffed and scratched with daily wear, but an exhibition caseback is just rubbing against the wrist and therefore it's not going to be scuffed and scratched as easily. Mineral crystal is acceptable. So the head of the piece is solid 316L grade stainless steel, and it's skeletonized as you can see, and they've also done a very good job because they have mirror polished these bevels on the left and the right hand flanks of the bezel, and also we've got 4 screws, and very aesthetically pleasing. It has a sci-fi or futuristic design to it. I like the curvature of the octagonal tonneau case and also the curvature of the double dome sapphire crystal. So skeletonized bridges to the movement. Now to clarify, there are 2 different finishes used in this piece. The head of the piece and the bracelet are entirely sandblasted and then DLC coated, so diamond-like carbon coated. But however, the movement, although it does have a similar grey satin finish to it, it's not sandblasted or DLC coated. What they use is fine glass particles, and they blast the bridges to the skeletonized movement with glass particles to give the stainless steel a matte finish. So although the movement is glass particle satin finished, it does complement the sandblasted finish and DLC coating of the head of the piece and the bracelet, but that's something to be mindful of. They use 2 different finishes. Skeletonized bridges of the movement are very well finished. The skeletonized hands are correctly proportioned. They are contrasting with mirror polishing. Again, I think they've missed an opportunity, because had they made the handset fully green rather than just the tips, that would improve the legibility. The problem with skeletonized mirror polished hands is the silver tone of the hands, they don't really contrast with the bridges to the movement because they're skeletonized, and we don't have a dial here because it's skeletonized. We just have a chaptering around the octagonal tonneau case. So reading the time is difficult as a result because we don't have large applied indices, there is no dial. They've inset silver mirror polished indices into the chaptering around the octagonal tonneau chaptering. Now, I think they could improve the legibility if they had made the hands entirely green rather than just the tips. The green portions of the skeletonized hands are lumed with C3 Super Luminova, which we'll test in the Lume test. In terms of finishing to the bridges, they've got nice bevels and chamfers in the cutouts of the skeletonized bridges. Quality of the finishing is good. Quality of the micro glass particle blasting to the bridges is also good. Nice matte finish to it. Does look visually rather similar to grade 5 titanium. Chaptering is correctly proportioned. It's octagonal, but they've missed an opportunity again here because they could have used applied indices, and rather than just having the chaptering and then indices which are set beneath it in silver, they should have fully lumed the applied indices with C3 Super Luminova. That again would improve the legibility, and you'll see why it's detrimental in the Lume test, the lack of lume on the applied indices. We do have green indices at 12, 9, 6 and 3. Does look aesthetically pleasing, does complement the green tips to the skeletonized hands, but they should have continued. Rather than just having 4 green indices at 12, 9, 6 and 3, they should have had 12. I think they should have used the same design throughout for continuity of design, but also to improve the legibility, because had they used 12 silver mirror polished indices with 12 green portions rather than just 12, 9, 6 and 3, 12 green indices would improve the legibility. The problem with the skeletonized hands is when you look at the other indices, which are just silver, the green tips to the hour and minute hand, they don't register very well with the other silver indices because the indices don't really stand out. They don't contrast very well with the chaptering or the skeletonized dial. And this is the problem with skeletonized pieces like this: legibility, functionality, the readability of the time is diminished. So had they used green indices for all 12 versus just 4 out of 12, that would improve the legibility. It is aesthetically pleasing, and the quality of the finishing to the bridges of the skeletonized movement is excellent. Quality of the AR coating on the underside of the tonneau sapphire crystal is also excellent. We've also got a mirror polished embossed triangle at the 12 o'clock on the bezel, and that does add interest to the bezel. So let's look at the bracelet in detail. H-link bracelet, as I've detailed, solid 316L grade stainless steel, sandblasted and then DLC coated, which is diamond-like carbon. The carbon in the coating makes it more hard and scratch resistant. So articulates well, doesn't feel stiff or kink, that's the benefit. Negative is we have longitudinal, lateral, side to side, up and down play in every single direction. This is very simple for CIGA design to correct. They simply drill the hole smaller in the end link in the bracelet and increase the diameter of the spring bar, and therefore that would make it an interference friction fit, because as you can see as it stands, it's sloppy. Disappointing. One could be magnanimous if this were below €100 in the low tier, but we are at the upper end of the low tier at €426. This kind of sloppy end link tolerance is not acceptable at €426. With regards to the finishing, it is excellent. Visually it looks very aesthetically pleasing. Does look like grade 5 titanium, even though it's actually 316L grade stainless steel. Flat link profile to the H-link bracelet, and the links are nice and slender. I like that there's not too much meat, they're not too thick, so the bracelet doesn't feel too thick and bulky. This does reduce the heft of the bracelet. Proportions are good. Now, normally I'd be critical of this having a 22:18 taper, because as you know from my previous reviews, 20:16 is the perfection personified taper, but however, this is a large octagonal tonneau case, 48mm diameter by 47.6 lug to lug. Therefore, it does need some meat on the bracelet to balance it. A 20:16 taper on this piece would be undersized. This does have a nice gradual taper, 22:18. In this case, I think it is correct. So finishing is excellent. Visually it looks very similar to grade 5 titanium, but it's sandblasted finish and then DLC coated to give it a matte finish rather than the luster of longitudinal brushed satin finishing. The edges have been deburred and chamfered very well, because we've got these large bevels machined on the edges to the top edge and the low edge of the flanks. So very aesthetically pleasing, because the bevels are mirror polished, which adds interest, but also they serve a purpose, because the large mirror polished bevels delete the sharp edge on the top edge and the low edge of the flat link H-link bracelet. Articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, so that's the benefit. Doesn't pull arm hairs, so that's good. But however, negative is because it uses push pins as a cost-cutting measure rather than screw pins, it's sloppy. Every single one of the flat link H-links in the bracelet rattle. And the cumulative effect across the length of the bracelet is all that play adds up, and cumulatively you get a sloppy bracelet. So benefit is articulates freely, it flows nicely, so it articulates, it wraps around the wrist well, that's the positive. The negative is it rattles, it's sloppy. Again, one could be magnanimous about this kind of play if this were a low tier piece below €100, but this is not. This is at the upper end, it's €426. So they need to tighten up the tolerances. Let's check the other side for continuity. Again, end-link articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, that's the benefit. Negative is, does have excess longitudinal, lateral, side to side and up and down play, and we're looking at significant play here. And again, this is simple to correct. CIGA design could very easily correct this by drilling the hole in the end link of the bracelet, smaller diameter, and increasing the diameter of the spring bar going through it. That would tighten it up to an interference friction fit. This is the kind of build quality, quality control and tolerances one expects at the upper end of the low tier, between €0 and €500. At 426, it needs to have tighter interference friction fit. The tolerances are not acceptable. With regards to finishing, again, beautiful finishing to the satin finishing. Does visually look very similar to grade 5 titanium. I think they really have missed an opportunity by not making this Z-Series Hunter entirely from grade 5 titanium, the head of the piece and the bracelet, because for two reasons. It would reduce the heft from 151 grams to 100 to 120 grams, which would enhance the comfort level and feel good factor, but visually it would aesthetically look very similar because it would have the same satin grey finish. Grade 5 titanium does look visually similar to 316L grade stainless steel that has been sandblasted and then DLC coated like this. But on a positive note, articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, so it flows nicely, wraps around the wrist well. Articulation is good. And of course we've got the same large mirror polished bevels on the top edge and the lower edge, no sharp edges, doesn't pull arm hairs, but again, sloppy. It rattles. Far too much play. They could tighten up the play in the bracelet very simply by upgrading to using 1.2mm screw pins versus push pins. This is a production cost cutting measure in order to maximise profit margin per piece, and I think it's a production cost cutting measure too far by CIGA Design, because this is €426. The industry standard at this price point at the upper end of the low tier is 1.2mm screw pins. It has to have screw pins at this price point. Push pins are not acceptable. Let's look at the clasp. So as I've detailed, it's signed with high definition engraving with a CIGA Design text logo in silver, which is good. 2 button push triggers are heavily sprung loaded, and the butterfly clasp opens freely. Left hand portion is engraved with stainless steel, right hand portion is engraved with a serial number. Flawless mirror polishing to the top side, underside and flanks, which is good. No sharp edges to the top edge or the low edge. It's been deburred and chamfered very well. The internals don't have sharp corners, so that's good. Let's check the hinge pins. Left hand hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, but we have excess play, not acceptable. Left hand inner hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink, that's the positive. Again, excess play, and it's significant. It's sloppy. Inner right hand hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink. Excess play again, disappointing. Finally, right hand hinge pin articulates freely, doesn't feel stiff or kink. Significant excess play. Again, cumulative effect is left inner, right outer, all have excess play. Cumulatively, it's sloppy, as you can see. It rattles. One could be magnanimous with a 2 button push butterfly clasp if this were below €100. €426. This does not say to me €426. This says to me below €100. In terms of build quality, quality control, materials and finishing, yes, the mirror polishing on the top side, underside and flanks is flawless. No sharp edges, no sharp corners, that's good. But these hinge pins are sloppy. All 4 of them need tightening up. Again, very easy to correct because they are simply pins which are fitted through drilled holes and then riveted on the ends. And CIGA Design simply need to correct this by drilling smaller diameter holes, and also they need to use a larger diameter stainless steel pin before riveting it over at the ends, and that will tighten it up to an interference friction fit on all 4 of the pins. And this is the kind of poor tolerances or poor build quality and quality control one expects with below €100 pieces in the low tier, but at 426 it has to be tight interference fit on all 4 hinge pins. On a positive note, the butterfly clasp snaps shut with a nice positive click. Both the left and the right hand portion snap shut well, and the 2 button push triggers are heavily sprung loaded, so it feels reliable and robust. My concern is, the reason why I'm so critical about push the pins in bracelets, the reason why I always examine them is because it's a production cost cutting measure by low tier Chinese brands in order to maximise profit margin per piece. But my real concern is the long term durability, because when you have excess play in a pin like this, and it's significant, it places the pin under excess shear load. And what happens is eventually the pin can't take the shear load and it shears. It also exacerbates the wear and tear of the pin going through the link and also the inner portion of the solid mill butterfly clasp. And what happens is it exacerbates the wear, so the pin wears down quickly, the hole becomes elongated, and therefore the play becomes more. And eventually what happens is the pin just shears because of the excess shear load and the excess play. The hole becomes enlarged and also the pin becomes worn down, and the play gets worse rapidly. So this is the problem. It's long-term durability. My concern is how long is it going to be before the 4 pins in this butterfly clasp, the excess shear load causes one of them to fail, and then the pin breaks, falls out, and then the piece drops on the ground and gets damaged. That's the reason why I'm so critical of these poor tolerances. It really is long-term durability. So let's look at the exhibition caseback in detail. Solid 316L grade stainless steel exhibition caseback, glazed with mineral crystal as a cost-cutting measure. It's acceptable. I'm not going to be critical of it. Doesn't need to be sapphire crystal glazed. And it's embossed with the specification of the piece. 4 stainless steel flathead screws in the 4 corners securing it. It provides an effective hermetic seal to 50 metres, which is acceptable for a daily wear piece. Does a good job of displaying the skeletonized movements which is the CIGA design caliber CD07 automatic. Also nice attention to detail because we've got an anchor shaped rotor, which is also embossed with CIGA design kinetics rotor. And this is unusual because usually rotors are a semicircle shape, but this one is anchor shaped, and I think it's interesting because it's skeletonized. Now, to clarify, the bridges to the skeletonized movement are not sandblasted and DLC coated as per the head of the piece and the bracelet, although they do have the same grey satin finish, rather like grade 5 titanium. They actually use micro glass particles to blast the bridges and also the anchor skeletonized rotor, and using micro glass particles gives it a nice fine satin finish, which is slightly different to the sandblasted and DLC coated finish to the head of the piece and the bracelet. So slightly different grey tone to it, rather like grade 5 titanium. Quality of the finishing to the bridges, which are micro glass particle blasted, and also the skeletonized anchor rotor, are very good. They've done a very good job of it, and I like the exhibition caseback because it does a good job of displaying the skeletonized movement, and one can look straight through the movements because it's fully skeletonized from the mineral crystal through to the front, which is sapphire crystal glazed in the tonneau case. So it's very well finished. The sapphire crystal, the exhibition caseback, which is mineral crystal glazed, is very flat. It's very low profile. This is the benefit of it only being 50 metres of hermetic seal, so I'm not going to be critical of it not being 100 metres, for example, because that would add thickness to the mineral crystal glazing, and there's minimal clearance between the rotor and the mineral crystal, so very flat, very low profile. Benefit of that is it reduces the thickness of this piece down to only 12.3, which is very good for an octagonal tonneau case like this. One would expect it to be 13mm plus. 12.3 is very thin. So the caliber is CD07 automatic, is very thin and low profile, and the benefit is it needs minimal clearance between the rotor and the mineral crystal exhibition caseback. So you can see just how thin it is. It's only 50 metres, but the 4 flathead screws are a credible alternative to using a screwed down caseback. Of course, it would be difficult to use a screwed down caseback because this is octagonal tonneau case versus a round case, and therefore they would have to reduce the diameter of the caseback if they wanted to use a screw down caseback. By having it with the 4 flathead screws, they've been able to keep the octagonal shape of it, which is good. The edges of the caseback are finished very well because we've got these large mirror polished bevels which are machined at 12, 9, 6 and 3, at 9 and 3, and in the corners as well. And it's very nice attention to detail because these mirror polished bevels, they delete the sharp edges on the octagonal caseback, and it means it's very comfortable. No sharp edges to the caseback whatsoever. So the quality of the mirror polishing to the bevels is good. Quality of the sandblasting and DLC coating to it is also very good. So the quality of the finishing to the head of the piece, the caseback and the bezel are very good. One thing I like about it is the correct decision of using quick release stainless steel spring bars versus standard stainless steel spring bars, because the bracelet end links and also the head of the piece, the octagonal tonneau case, as I've detailed, they are sandblasted and then DLC coated. But if you use a spring bar tool in order to remove the bracelet, there's a risk of slipping and scuffing and scratching the DLC coating on the head of the piece and the DLC coating on the end links in the H-link bracelet. But by using quick release stainless steel spring bars, one doesn't need a spring bar tool, and it works very well. You can easily remove the H-link bracelet if you want to fit a strap, and the quick release stainless steel spring bars negate the need for a spring bar tool. So good choice. They deserve credit for that, and they work very well. Right, so let's test the push-pull crown execution. So, solid 316L grade stainless steel push-pull crown, knurled finish rather than being coin edge finished or gear tooth profile. Correctly proportioned. It has angular profiles to the crown guards and they do a good job of protecting it, so it does retain the aesthetic of the octagonal case. I like the symmetry of it. And the crown is correctly proportioned, and also it's engraved with the CIGA design emblem. Mirror polished, and this is interesting because they haven't sandblasted the crown and then DLC coated it, and I think they've made the correct decision here. I want to give them credit for this because the crown is an area that's prone to daily wear and tear, because this is a push-pull crown, and for example you might want to manually wind this clockwise 40 turns in order to fully wind it to its maximum 40-hour power reserve. Now, with daily wear and tear, for example, if you don't wear this every day for 8 to 12 hours per day to wind it automatically, you're going to manually wind it via the crown. And of course the friction of your finger and thumb rubbing against the crown, if it were sandblasted and then DLC coated as per the head of the piece and the bracelet, what you would do is you'd actually wear off the DLC coating, and that's the negative of it. So by having the crown in bare stainless steel, bare 316L grade stainless steel, which is mirror polished on the knurling, that's good, because with daily wear and tear you're not going to wear off the DLC coating. The crown is not DLC coated and they haven't sandblasted it either, it's mirror polished. It's very well finished, no sharp edges to the nail teeth, large chamfer which deletes the sharp tips, and it's good, correctly proportioned. You can get good purchase with your index finger and thumb. So I'm pleased to see they did not sandblast and DLC coat it. They've made the right decision. So in the closed position, as it's a push-pull crown versus a screw-down crown, which provides an effective hermetic seal to 50 metres, one can manually wind the CIGA design caliber CD07 automatic to its maximum 40-hour power reserve. Feels smooth. In terms of how it feels very similar to a Seiko NH35A or an NH38A, which we'll all be familiar with. It's got that kind of smooth feeling to it, doesn't feel rough or gritty, feels pleasant. One can feel the tension gradually building up in the mainspring, feels nice and smooth, so I like manually winding it. Pulling it out to the first click position is the final click position because we don't have a date complication. Benefit of that is there is no phantom date setting position, so just one click on the crown. Pulling it out to the first click is the final click, and that hacks the movement. If you look at the skeletonized second hand with the contrasting green tip, you can see it's now stopped dead, so therefore it's possible to set the time precisely to the second. So we're now in the time setting position. Nice light resistance to it. Feels very similar to a Miyota 8215 and also similar to a Seiko NH35A, which we'll be familiar with. It's got that light resistance to it. 24 joules, which is the same as the Seiko NH35A. So it's got a very similar feeling in terms of friction. Feels refined. Meshing of the gearing feels good. Doesn't feel rough or gritty when you're setting the time. Feels smooth both clockwise and anti-clockwise when you cycle through the 12 hours. So it does feel good. I like that it's got minimal backplay in the meshing of the gearing. Feels refined. So when one rotates the knurled crown clockwise and anti-clockwise, there's an almost immediate response. Minimal amount of backplay. In terms of backplay in the gearing, it feels similar to a Miyota 8215 or a Seiko NH35A. That's the kind of level of backplay we're looking at. Feels good, feels nice and tight, and I like the low friction feeling of it. Doesn't feel rough, feels nice and smooth. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice solid click, and that restarts the movement. You can see the skeletonized second hand with a contrasting green tip begins to sweep around at 4 Hz. Now, the thing I like about this calibre is rather than running at 21,600 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 3 Hz, as per a Seiko NH35A for example, the negative of that is you get this stutter or judder to the second hand at 3 Hz. This one runs at 28,800 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 4 Hz, which is my personal favourite, because with a 4 Hz sweep, the second hand has a nice smooth sweep. It doesn't stutter or judder around the dial as per a 3 Hz sweep. So I like it. I like that it's 4 Hz. It's got that nice smooth 4 Hz sweep. So manual winding works well. Hacking works well, setting the time works well, push-pull crown works well. 50 metres is perfectly acceptable. I'm not going to be critical of it not having a screw-down crown, and 100 metres, because this is a daily wear piece, 50 metres of water resistance is perfectly acceptable. Benefit of it being only 50 versus 100 is the tonneau sapphire crystal, which is double domed, is thin. And also in the exhibition Caseback, the mineral crystal is thin. Had they made this 100 metres, the glazing in both the front and the back would need to be thicker in order to withstand 100 metres of pressure. And the benefit of it being 50 is the mineral crystal is thin, and also the tonneau sapphire crystal is thin. So this piece is only 12.3. Had they made it 100 metres with a screw-down crown and thicker crystals, it would be 13 plus. 12.3 really is very impressive, and it is a large piece, so low profile is a benefit. I think they've made the correct decision by reducing it to 50 and also using a push-pull crown with 50 versus a screw-down crown with 100 metres. Right, so I'll give you wrist shots and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now I haven't sized the bracelet, and I'm pleased to report this is a very long flat link H-link bracelet, which would even fit up to a 9-inch wrist. I can easily slide an index finger beneath the bracelet and butterfly clasp. I could actually just slide 2 fingers beneath it. So this indicates this would fit up to even a very large 9-inch wrist size. There are enough removable links on the 6 o'clock and the 12 o'clock side of the H-link bracelet to size this down to a minimum 6-inch wrist size. So to clarify, this will fit from minimum 6 inches up to maximum 9 inches. However, there is a negative to it, and again, CIGA Design have missed an opportunity. This is an error which is very easy to correct. There are no half links in the flat link H-link bracelet. This is always the problem with 2-button push butterfly clasp bracelets like this H-link bracelet. The lack of micro adjustment. We don't have a micro adjustment clasp, and that's a given because it's a 2-button push butterfly clasp. We're not going to be able to have a glide lock style or, for example, ratcheting mechanism with this style of clasp. That's a given. But what they could do to enhance the fit or the sizing is add a half link either side on the 6 and the 12 o'clock side, because if this H-link bracelet had a half link on the 6 side, half link on the 12 side, you could get the perfect fit, because sometimes with H-link bracelets, adding or subtracting one full link from the H-link bracelet doesn't give the desired fit. The bracelet either feels slightly too tight or too loose. And regardless of wrist size, 6 to 7 inches or 7 to 8 inches respectively, half links are necessary, and they really should be mandatory with flat link H-link bracelets or any bracelet that uses a 2-button push butterfly clasp. For example, if this were beads of rice, Jubilee style, oyster style, with a 2-button push butterfly clasp, a half link is mandatory because you can then centralize the clasp. Because the other problem is, if you remove one full link from the 6 or the 12 slide, the 2-button push butterfly clasp then sits off center. It sits too far to the 6 or too far to the 12 side. So you can't centralize the 2-button push triggers if you remove one full link from the 6 or the 12. And of course, if you remove 2 full links, then the bracelet will be too tight. So it's hard to get the right fit and keep the clasp centralised, because really what you need to do is remove an even number of links from the 6 and the 12 to keep the 2-button push triggers central on the wrist rather than offset to the 6 or the 12. So, in the absence of micro adjustment, on the fly adjustment, I think they need to add a half link on the 6, half link on the 12 side. That would enhance it. Again, very simple to correct that error, but they've missed the opportunity. And it's disappointing to see CIGA Design do that, because adding or subtracting one full link often doesn't give the correct fit. But 6 inches is the minimum. Now, as I've detailed, normally I'd be critical of this not having the perfection personified taper of 20 to 16, which is the industry standard. It is the best. But on this occasion, I'm not. 22 to 18 has enough meat on the bracelet to balance the large octagonal tonneau case. It does need it. It needs to have that aggressive taper from 22 to 18, but it's not too thick. The links are not too thick, but they're wide enough, so they've got the proportions correct on the bracelet. Bracelet articulates well, visually looks aesthetically pleasing because it's got that matte satin finish, which looks like grade 5 titanium, and it does match the case very well. So I want to give credit with regards to the finishing, because it's sandblasted and then DLC coated, and as I've detailed, DLC means diamond-like carbon. The carbon in the coating makes it more scratch resistant, but also gives it this satin grey finish rather than the brushed satin finish of 3160 grade stainless steel. But it feels very heavy. The main negative I want you to be mindful of isn't the wrist presence. It's 48 by 47.6. It is a large octagonal tonneau case, so needless to say, this is best suited to collectors with a larger wrist of 7 to 8 inches. If you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist, you can immediately rule this piece out because it dominates the wrist too much. Does have wrist presence, does wear with a large size. 48 is large diameter, 47.6 is a long lug to lug. Now 48 lug to lug is the sweet spot, so I'm not critical of that, but the point I'm making is because of the octagonal tonneau shape of the case, because it's 48 diameter by 47.6, it's like a thick slab of 3160 grade stainless steel. They have made the correct decision by skeletonizing the case. That does reduce some of the meat, it deletes some of the heft, but it's still 151 grams. It's 151 with a very long bracelet, so needless to say, if you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist, you're going to be removing 8 links. If you have a 7 to 8 inch wrist, you're still going to be removing 4 to 6 links. Even on my large 8 inch wrist, I would be removing 3 to 4 links and reducing it down to circa 140 grams. So, to clarify, you will remove 20 grams from this bracelet if you have the 6 to 7 inch wrist. If you have a 7 to 8, you're going to be removing 10 to 15 grams of heft, but it's still heavy. They really have missed an opportunity by not making the head of the piece and the bracelet entirely from grade 5 titanium. Visually it would look the same, it would have the same grey satin finish. They wouldn't need to sandblast it, they wouldn't need to DLC coat it, that would therefore reduce production cost per piece and maximise profit margin per piece. Of course, titanium is more expensive than stainless steel, and it's more expensive to machine because it's a harder and more difficult material to machine to a high quality finish. But Grade 5 titanium still could be retailed at the €426 price point. Benefit is that would reduce this piece to between 100 and 130 grams. So at 151, it's excessive. 150 grams and below is the sweet spot. For example, for a 40 or a 41mm head of the piece, with a stainless steel bracelet, regardless of whether it's oyster style, jubilee style or beads of rice style, 150 grams and below is acceptable for a 40 or a 41. This is large at 48, so one has to expect some heft, but it is a skeletonized movement. We've got a skeletonized movement, skeletonized dial, and also skeletonized tonneau case. So this really should be below 130 grams with a very thin profile to the flat link H-link bracelet, but it's not, it's 150. It's too heavy. 151, sorry, it's too heavy. So shame it's not grade 5 titanium because it would look the same, but the comfort level and feel good factor would be better. Now on a positive note, curvature of the octagonal tonneau case is good. It does sit on top of the wrist like a thick slab of 316L grade stainless steel, but one has to be realistic. That's to be expected with an octagonal tonneau case like this. The positive is the thickness is only 12.3. One would expect this to be 13mm with an exhibition case back and a curved tonneau sapphire crystal. 12.3 is a pleasant surprise. The negative is it does have tall slab sides to the octagonal tonneau case. They could have visually made this more aesthetically pleasing and also reduced the heft if they'd slimmed down the flanks to the case. Just bear with me, I'll get the camera to focus. You can see it's got very tall slab sides to the octagonal tonneau case, and because of the finishing, because it's matte finish rather than mirror polished, it visually looks like a block or a slab of 316L grade stainless steel, which has then been sandblasted and DLC coated. They really should have slimmed down the flanks. Far too tall, far too thick. Bezel looks okay because it does have nice curvature as per the curvature of the tonneau sapphire crystal, so that's okay. But this skeletonized flanks to the case is just too thick. So the problem is, although it's not actually very thick at 12.3, but visually it looks thick. This looks like a 13 or a 14mm thick piece because the bezel projects above the tall slab sides of the flanks, and visually it creates this impact. This is a big thick slab of 316L grade stainless steel. Also feels heavy, so it looks thick and also feels thick, but in reality it's only 12.3. Now the positive is it will slip underneath a shirt cuff easily if you wear business shirts, because you'll know from my previous reviews, anything below 13mm is the sweet spot to easily slip underneath a shirt cuff if you wear business shirts. So at 12.3, it's 0.7 below the sweet spot. Will slip underneath a shirt cuff, but it does dominate the wrist. Even on my large 8-inch wrist, the 48 diameter is notable. I think they've made a mistake with the sizing, the dimensions. This is too large, the diameter. This should be a maximum of 41mm, and ideally they could have made it 40. Because had they made this 40mm with the same octagonal tonneau case, with a 20-16 perfection personified taper, and had they made it from grade 5 titanium, if this weighed 100 to 130 grams, feel good factor would be enhanced, comfort level would be enhanced, and visually it wouldn't dominate the wrist. It would make it more suitable for a 6 to 7 inch wrist and also a 7 to 8 inch wrist respectively in 40mm with a 20 to 16 bracelet. And at 100 to 130 grams in grade 5 titanium, the comfort level would be superlative. Problem with this is it's thick and also 151 grams. You really do feel like it's a thick slab of 316L grade stainless steel on the wrist, and it's really down to visually the slab sides to the octagonal tonneau case, as you can see. So large piece, really only suitable for a 7 to 8 inch plus wrist size, but however, if you enjoy the sci-fi or futuristic look of the skeletonized movement, the octagonal tonneau case, and of course the matte finishing to the flat link H-link bracelet and octagonal case, you will appreciate it. It's futuristic design. I do appreciate that it's not an homage, and CIGA Design do deserve credit on a positive note for coming up with an original design to the Z Series Hunter rather than it being an homage. And I like that it's original. This is something one has to give due credit to microbrands for, coming up with original designs rather than just producing homages of Rolex, Tudor and Amiga pieces, for example. Right, so let's do a Lume test and we'll see how the Lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. So this uses C3 superluminova on the skeletonized hands and also on the indices at 12, 9, 6 and 3. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, this is disappointing. Now, we've clearly got two different amounts of layers here. So on the applied indices at 12, 9, 6 and 3, we've got 3 to 4 layers. On the skeletonized hands, I think we're looking at 1 to 2 or a maximum of 2 to 3. Clearly there's a difference because you can see the green tips of the skeletonized hands and the second hand have negligible performance. The exciter isn't potent, it lacks potency and therefore it's fading immediately to nothing. On the hands it's dreadful. The indices are also poor performing because we've only got 3 to 4 layers and you can see the difference. So just bear with me, I'm going to charge this up again because the performance is so weak in the potency of the exciter that the camera is struggling to autofocus on it. So that's now fully charged, and as you can see, this is its absolute maximum. On the tips to the skeletonized hands, the exciter is so weak that the camera is struggling to autofocus. So I'm just going to leave it on, and you can see. They've made a mistake here because they've only loomed the 4 applied indices at 12, 9, 6 and 3. There are silver mirror polished applied indices at 12 positions, all 12 hours. But what they should have done was use the same correct proportion. For example, at 12, 9, 6 and 3, we've got larger applied indices with a green profiling. And that works well. Legibility is better, but they've reduced the size of the other mirror polished applied indices for the other hours, and they haven't applied any green C3. So the problem is, you can see, one only sees the 12, 9, 6 and 3. You can't see the other indices. This is dreadful. The other problem is they've only loomed the tip of the skeletonized hands. What they should have done was fully loomed the skeletonized hands entirely with green. They could have kept them skeletonized to complement the skeletonized movements, but they should have fully loomed them, not just the tips. And also they need to have 5 to 6 layers on the indices, 5 to 6 layers on the hands, because you can see. Problem is, the tips of the hands don't allow for a large area, a large enough plot for 5 to 6 layers of C3 to be applied. And of course now we have negligible performance. You can't read the time in the dark. That's the reality of it. 12, 9, 6 and 3 have 3 to 4 layers. That's okay, but it's still not good enough at this price point. It should be 5 to 6. Hands only have 1 to 2 or a maximum of 2 to 3 and dreadful. This is a missed opportunity. It's a mistake. They should have fully loomed all 12 applied indices. They should have enlarged the other indices to match the proportions of the 12, 9, 6 and 3 ones. They should have fully loomed the skeletonized hands because you can see this is dreadful performance. You can't read the time in the dark. That's the truth of it. And it's a real shame. One could be magnanimous if this were below €100 in the low tier. But we're at the upper end of the low tier. I keep repeating it because it's an important point. €426 is at the upper end of the low tier. To clarify, low tier is €0 to €500. At €426, it has to be the industry standard. 5 to 6 on the dial, 5 to 6 on the hands, regardless of whether you use C3 or BGW9, which are the industry standards. At €426, it has to be 5 to 6. No excuses. This is a production cost-cutting measure too far, and it's wholly unacceptable for CIGA Design to use it. The reason why they're doing it is to maximise profit margin per piece. And I think it's unacceptable. Right, so let's discuss the movement use because it's my favourite aspect of the piece. So this uses the CIGA Design Caliber CD07 Automatic, which is an in-house caliber made in China. Has 24 joules. It runs at 28,800 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 4 Hz. It has hand winding and hacking, which use for complications. 40-hour power reserve is perfectly acceptable. Stated accuracy is -15 to +25 seconds per day, so rather wide accuracy range. However, on a positive note, CIGA Design are doing a good job and they're clearly regulating the caliber CD07s they're using in 5 positions because this one is running consistently at +3 seconds per day, which is actually within cost chronometer limits of -4 to +6. So +3 is excellent accuracy, 40 hours is good. Hand winding works well, hacking works well, setting the time works well. Skeletonized movement is well finished, and as I've detailed, it is micro glass particle blasted to give it a matte finish. Also the rotor, which is skeletonized in an anchor shape, is well finished, and that's also micro glass particle finished. So quality of the finishing is excellent on the bridges and the rotor, and also the bevels and the chamfers on the skeletonization of the bridges is good. Quality of the finishing is good. And I like the mirror polishing to the bevels on it. So it's a well-finished movement. It's aesthetically pleasing. Also, the gear is signed with CIGA Design, which is good, and also CD07, which is the caliber. They've also signed with silver embossing on the front of the rotor, CIGA design to a good standard. So quality of the finishing to the caliber is good. Quality of the machining is good. I like it, and I like the 4 screws which are securing the skeletonized movement to the case, which is also skeletonized. So it's a good quality movement. The finishing is good, accuracy is good, build quality, quality control. Reliability is the only question mark because it's unproven. This is a new piece, the Z Series Hunter. Now, they have used the CD07 automatic in other pieces, but this is a new version of it, which increases the skeletonization by 200%. So they've skeletonized the caliber CD07 further. They've reduced more metal from it to improve the skeletonization visually. So it makes it more see-through, that's the point. But it's unproven, the reliability is unproven. That is the one question mark. I can't back it and say this is a reliable, well-proven workhorse caliber which has been in service for 5 years, for example. I can't say that. So that's my only concern about it, long-term durability and reliability. Accuracy is excellent at 3 seconds, 40 hours is acceptable, hand winding feels smooth, hacking works well. I like it. Visually it looks good, it's well finished. I like it skeletonized, and the finishing to the anchor rotor is good and also adds interest. They didn't just use a semicircle rotor, which is the default option. It's got this anchor rotor, which is very interesting. So, good looking movement, technically looks good, but reliability is my only concern. I'm not saying it's an unreliable movement, but it's not proven yet. Really, I would like to see it with 5 years of service behind it, and that would back up the reliability, and then I could say it's a reliable, well-proven workhorse caliber. But in terms of finishing, excellent at this price point, and I think they deserve credit for using their own in-house caliber rather than just modifying a Miyota or a Seiko caliber, for example, and skeletonizing it. They deserve credit for producing their own in-house caliber, the CD07, and it does add value to the piece. So lastly, I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So, low tier piece, but we're at the upper end of the low tier, €0 to €500 at €426. I'm going to declare the quality as okay, and I'm going to declare the value as poor. Now, you might think that's harsh. Why do I say okay quality rather than good or excellent? Because the bracelet really lets the piece down. Too much play in the end links, sloppy bracelet, wholly unacceptable. What we're looking at here is a good quality head of the piece on a poor quality bracelet, and unfortunately that downgrades the watch. The bracelet is poor on a good quality head of the piece, and therefore I have to downgrade it to saying it's okay quality rather than good or excellent. Value is poor. This is expensive at $499 or €426. We've got 1 to 2 layers of C3 on the skeletonized hands and a maximum of 2 to 3 on the indices, and we haven't even got C3 on all 12 of the indices. We've only got it on 12, 9, 6 and 3. Production cost cutting measure after production cost cutting measure. One could be magnanimous below €100, €426, one cannot be magnanimous. This is poor value. That's the reality of it. This faces stiff competition from other microbands in the low tier between €0 and €500. At €426, it's at the upper end, and therefore it faces some very stiff competition. Yes, it does have an in-house caliber, which adds value to it. I do like the Tonneau Sapphire Crystal, but this is a missed opportunity. The one thing they've really missed the opportunity on this is they haven't made it from grade 5 titanium. As a production cost cutting measure, in order to maximise profit margin per piece, all 3 versions of the Z Series Hunter, silver, carbon and black, this is the silver, they've made them from stainless steel. And grade 5 titanium would reduce the heft, but also it would have the same aesthetics, this matte satin grey finish rather than stainless steel. And by sandblasting it and then DLC coating it to make it look like grade 5 titanium, they're trying to make it look like a grade 5 titanium skeletonized piece. But it's not. It's stainless steel. It's too heavy at 151 grams as a result. And the problem is it's got this sloppy bracelet which downgrades it. The other negative, as I've detailed, is the lack of half links in the clasp because it's difficult to get the correct fit. So we're looking at error after error with this piece, and I think it's unacceptable. So therefore, I can only ever say it's okay quality but poor value. This needs a V2, and ideally I'd like to see them reduce it to 40mm and also use a 20 to 16 taper and make it entirely from grade 5 titanium. Then if it were €426, I could upgrade it to say excellent quality and excellent value if they used 5 to 6 layers of C3 on all 12 indices and fully lume the skeletonized hands rather than just the tips. So can't recommend it to you for consideration. Disappointing piece. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the CIGA Design Z Series Hunter. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.